You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions, ep027. And now, here are Craig and Jeff.
Welcome back to the Tricorder Transmissions. We are your hosts, Jeff Hewlett.
And Craig Cohen. And this week, we are going to be talking about, I'm sure this is one of your favorite episodes, Jeff, the alternative factor.
Yes, and the shame of it was there was no alternative. So,
Speaking of alternatives, this week, news broke that prior to J.J. Abrams' 2009 Star Trek reboot, whatever you want to call it, there was another sort of script that had been developed prior to J.J. coming on board called Star Trek The Beginning. Have you heard about this?
yeah, I read about it. So, feel free to give out the details.
All right. Well, it was called Star Trek The Beginning, and it would have taken place pretty much between Enterprise and the original series. And the hook here was that the film's main character would be a guy named Tiberius Chase.
Yeah, that's chuckle-worthy.
Is a name that sounds familiar because that was revealed to be Kirk's middle name.
Mm-hmm.
So he would have been an ancestor of Kirk, and he is billed in the script or described in the script as a Top Gun starfighter pilot in the United Earth Stellar Navy.
Oh, God.
And I think the script deals with Vulcans and Romulans, and there being some kind of Romulan plot to destroy the Vulcan race.
Something like they came to Earth. They were going to invade Earth, and they wanted the humans to hand over the Vulcan population of Earth or something like that.
Yeah, it sounds really kind of uninspired to me. It seems kind of like, I don't know why Star Trek writers are so sort of tied up in this whole war-driven or battle-driven, Star Trek plot when, the series didn't really revolve around that.
No, and I think, just the small amount of details we've heard about this script. I mean, eventually, maybe someday it'll completely leak out and we'll see the entire thing or whatever the whole huge synopsis was. But, I think that this really illustrates what was wrong with the franchise. Before the reboots started, people will still argue there's stuff still wrong with the franchise because of the reboots. But, I think that it embodies everything that was going in the wrong direction about Star Trek. And say what you will about JJ and say what you will about the reboots. After hearing this, I'm more happy that JJ came in and did what he did and gave us Kirk and Spock back. Whatever form that they're in, at least they're back. And we have them again instead of this mess that would have been.
The funniest thing about Star Trek to me, or at least how it's being handled as sort of a movie franchise, is this desire for Paramount to make it an event-style, Avengers-level franchise movie. Whereas, Star Trek was always sort of a big deal. But theatrically, those films were never, off the chart, on, the same level as like an E.T. or an Indiana Jones. I mean, they did well for themselves. So it's just... It seems like Paramount could have handled the relaunch of Star Trek, by saying, hey, let's make sort of a smaller scale film that's still going to have tons of effect work in it, but it doesn't have to be $100 million film. We could spend $60 million on a film, and the Star Trek audience is going to turn out,
Yeah, well, the problem is that they had to appeal to new audiences, I think. They had to try to draw in a new crowd.
Yeah, and that's also part of the problem now, whereas... with this filmmaking by committee, the idea is you want to be able to appeal to as many demographics as possible. And I think the 2009 Star Trek did that, rather successfully. I remember coming away from 2009 being, for the most part, pretty happy with the film.
Yep.
But it's just funny that, the immediate idea seemed to be like, let's make a film that could compete box office wise with like a Revenge of the Sith or an Avengers. It just seems silly to me because it doesn't seem like theatrically that was ever really what Star Trek was.
No, I agree, but I think it was one of those positions where it was an all in or nothing, because it was either kill the franchise completely or just throw a crap up ton of money at it and let's make the biggest relaunch reboot that we can. Let's get a big director on board.
Yeah.
Let's give the audience Kirk and Spock and McCoy and the rest of the crew back again. Let's start from the beginning. Let's make a clean slate. And if it doesn't work out, okay, we'll kill the series. But let's just throw everything at it that we've got.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the mentality of Hollywood in general nowadays.
Well, yes and no. There have been quite a few reboots that were low budget reboots that the whole reboot thing with the built-in audience. They figure, well, we got this audience, or at least some people will go to see it. But I think with Star Trek, they took it that extra step further and said, how can we make this a franchise appeal to a new audience, which kind of was to the detriment of the existing fan base in a way, because it stood to really piss off a lot of fans, which it did.
Yeah.
But that you had to be a little bit more open-minded if you're part of the original fan base. But it seems like I've talked to a lot of people who weren't real Star Trek fans who thought both of the new movies were fantastic. Younger people, teenagers, people in the early 20s who really didn't have any experience with Star Trek other than seeing a couple episodes on TV and not even really knowing much about the original series. They're like, these are great. They're really tailored toward today's audience rather than the audience from, the late 70s and the 80s that, Wrath of Khan and Search for Spock and even The Voyage Home were geared towards. So, I guess it's kind of a sad byproduct of society today, and you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt when you go in to see it if you're a fan of the original.
Yeah, and my thing about reboots in general is I'm not opposed to them, because ultimately what they're going to do is if somebody, especially a younger person, goes in and sees the movie or the reboot and says, wow, that was pretty cool. You know what? I'm going to go check out everything that came before.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, that's bringing new eyes on the older series, which is always cool because it keeps them alive and it keeps them, it keeps people watching, which, and that's the thing about movies. I know, when Star Trek 2009 came out, that didn't mean that I would never be able to watch Star Trek the Motion Picture again if I ever wanted to.
Right. Exactly.
So, but it is interesting to always see these Hollywood stories where you can see where a movie could have gone.
Exactly. I'm just going to say this right here. Just going to put this out there. Tiberius Chase. Tiberius Chase, really? What would they have called him in the movie? Would he had a call sign? Would his nickname be like Tibby,
Yeah.
or Lieutenant Chase? What would they have called him? I mean, it doesn't even sound like it has a ring to it. It could have been like Captain Kirk. Sounds good. Mr. Spock. Sounds good. What would you do with Tiberius Chase?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just a tangent there, but
Yeah.
Did you by any chance see the little bit of a concern that was going on earlier in the week where when Nimoy showed up in the airport in a wheelchair with the oxygen tank?
No, that's completely off my radar. What happened?
Yeah. So somebody, a paparazzi or a fan, somebody caught a picture of Nimoy being wheeled through an airport in a wheelchair, wearing an oxygen tank, and the fan base got a little concerned and called out for some information. And Nimoy went on Twitter and announced that he'd been diagnosed with COPD.
Okay.
Yeah, so for anybody who doesn't know, COPD is a breathing disorder that makes it difficult to breathe, pulmonary trouble, and it gets progressively worse. But he seems to be in good spirits about it, and he's on the proper treatment. So he says he's doing okay. So
all right.
Just thought that was a sad thing to see, that picture of a beloved sci-fi character of mine, and I know yours.
Yeah.
Getting on in years, and pretty sad.
It is.
Yeah.
Good to hear that he's doing somewhat okay though.
Yeah. So on another alternative slant, are you ready to get into the alternative factor?
If we must.
Are you tipping your hand, Craig?
Only a little.
All right. So The alternative factor aired on March 30th of 1967, and the remaster aired on December 1st of 2007.
All right, and let's get into the very exciting sounding synopsis. Investigating the cause of a massive galaxy-wide disruption in space, the Enterprise finds a mad scientist who claims that he is being pursued by a hideous being.
Well, doesn't sound too bad.
No.
Oh, well, let's watch it.
You got it.
All right, so we'll get started with our scene-specific commentary. Cue yourselves up, and we're going to start in 3, 2, 1.
Here we have the familiar
Side
flyby.
shot, yeah.
Yes.
I like the side flyby rather than the behind the saucer shot. There's an interesting overhead shot of the bridge.
Yeah, it was reminiscent of another shot from earlier in the season.
Yeah, I kind of
had like a severe overhead, but it's cool seeing the directors get kind of creative with their shots.
Yeah, nice low angle shot of Kirk there. The lighting.
Yeah, this is director Gerd Oswald, who died in '89 at the age of 61, and we've talked about him before. He directed The Conscience of the King.
Oh,
yeah.
All right, cool. He just made a call at the cartography. And see, here's another instance where no Sulu, just random yellow shirt and red shirt, no rhyme or reason to who's doing what job.
Yeah. And this was actually earlier in the production order than Errand of Mercy, The Devil in the Dark. So it's interesting to see how these were produced out of order.
I was wondering what the audience back then was thinking when they were seeing these shows. Like, how you weren't sure who was a recurring character and who wasn't, because sometimes Sulu was there, sometimes Scotty was there, sometimes they weren't. Seems kind of strange. You notice Spock used the word winking out?
Yes, I was like, is that some kind of scientific term that I've never heard of?
I was like, I mean, he used winking out to describe the universe disappearing and reappearing.
Yeah.
So apparently everything in the known universe vanished and reappeared, right? Within the span of seconds. And they had that really strange looking space overlay effect going on there.
Yeah, it's a good thing he didn't jettison
I
pod
was
there
going
by
to say
mistake.
that. He just pressed the button, and I know the jettison pod is the third button down. So he could have just killed somebody else by jettisoning the pod. Phew. Yeah.
And Spock is completely perplexed.
Yes.
There's nothing funnier on this show than watching Spock try and figure something out that he doesn't have all of the clues to yet.
Yeah. And it's always good when McCoy is there to needle him, too, for not knowing. And Kirk is very inquisitive. Cosmic winking out. It almost sounds like the name of a band or a party or something. Going to the cosmic wink out, dude. No.
How different do you think some of these episodes would have been without Spock's contribution?
Oh, God. I don't even know if I could think of that. That just seems really...
I'm not saying as a character, but...
Yeah, like without him figuring things out.
The things that Spock brings to the table seem...
Oh, yeah. Well, I've said it over and over again that without the mind meld and the nerve pinch, they'd have been dead hundreds of times over. I mean, Kirk would be dead by now.
Yeah.
You know?
But then you can be like, how many times did Scotty sort of perform a miracle?
Yeah. Well, not as many times as Spock has saved, especially on away missions. You know, Spock is always knocking people out. If it wasn't for Spock, they would never get back in City on the Edge of Forever, right? Yeah. So, I don't know. Very interesting.
It is. And, everybody on the bridge is important, but it's funny to think of the amount of times that Spock really brought something essential to the table in terms of getting them through a particular episode.
Oh, most certainly.
And here we are with a nice on-location shot.
Is this Vasquez Rocks again?
Yeah, it looks like it. There's one peak that definitely looks like it, but you know how much I love seeing them on an actual location.
Oh, absolutely. So another uncharted planet. And there's no rhyme or reason to these away
random
crews.
Red shirts with Kirk and Spock, which
And just in Devil in the Dark, they beam down without any security whatsoever, and there's a known threat.
Yeah.
And here it's just some kind of weird spatial anomaly, and they beam down 4 red shirts and Kirk and Spock, but no McCoy. And Spock just kind of wiggling that tricorder around, and there's that really interesting looking dome ship just kind of sitting there.
Yeah, and that's definitely got a very 1960s kind of production design to it.
Flying saucer looking thing. Oh, and it's going to get reused.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, in the Gamesters of Triskelion, that's where the little brains that Wager and Quat lose, they're underneath that dome.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So gets reused. So we don't know what this little ship is, but now we see who we will know as Lazarus momentarily.
With these stage makeup on, basically.
Yeah, that weird. And here's his first dive off a cliff, which will not be his last.
With piped-in scream.
Now, who could survive that fall? That's a hell of a fall onto solid rock, no less.
Yeah. And
his little glued-on Fu Manchu didn't come off.
Well, I'll tell you that, in the theater they use that spirit gum, man. And that's some good stuff.
Yeah. So you'll notice off to the right here's this mysterious engineer, Charlene Masters, who I guess is filling the Scotty role this episode with no explanation as to who she is or why she's there.
Yeah. And she's wearing blue, too.
Yeah, which is not an engineering color.
Yeah.
So maybe another thing to blame on the earliness of the first season. They hadn't quite gelled all of that stuff together, or hadn't written the rule books on a lot of it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about her character later, and a huge aspect of her character that was sort of removed from the early drafts of that script.
Yeah. So, still trying to figure out what's going on. And it takes them forever to figure out what exactly is going on, too. It takes them a long, almost to the end of the episode before they realize exactly.
Oh, yeah. It's, 40 plus minutes in.
Oh, God, yeah. Code Factor 1. Here's a new Starfleet status. Invasion status.
And he almost accidentally hit that jettison pod again.
Oof. This is no drill. But invasion status, I'm trying to figure out why it would be an invasion status.
Yeah.
What is that? Somebody's invading somewhere? I don't get it. Do you get it?
No, I do not.
Okay. Somebody out there in listener land, hit us up on Facebook and tell us what invasion status has to do with this episode. Because as far as I know, they don't know exactly what's going on yet. They will figure out that there's a crossover with a parallel universe going on. Maybe that would trigger an invasion status, but they don't know that yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. Oh, here's a historic moment. This is the first time in Trek we've seen two-way communication with Starfleet Command.
Oh, that's actually over the...
They've only had incoming messages and sending messages, never two-way conversations. This is the first time. This is
their first FaceTime.
Mm-hmm. Their first video conference. Yeah. So another completely random Starfleet senior officer. Mm-hmm. We've never seen him before. Probably won't see him again.
Yeah, with a very interesting design on his dress uniform there. It isn't sprinkled with various little stuff surrounding it. It's just a straight up, like it almost looks like a seal.
Yeah, I've thought in the previous episodes when they have their dress uniforms on, it almost looks like they have little bits of the little food stuck to it. Little cubes of food.
Yeah,
they look like the little bits of food. So we just learned that Starfleet Command is pretty much hanging the Enterprise out to dry. They're not sending any help to investigate this. They're like, you know what? You guys got to figure this out and figure out a way to stop it. You're on your own. You got Spock. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, Spock will figure it all out. And they beam this dude back to the Enterprise. They don't know who he is. They don't know if he's just some guy.
So this is Lazarus. And originally, this role was to be played by John Drew Barrymore, Drew Barrymore's dad.
Yep.
And came time to shoot. Hey, he just didn't show up.
Mm-hmm.
He had other stuff to do.
Yeah, no show.
So instead, in his place, we got actor Robert Brown, born in 1926, born right here in New Jersey in Trenton.
Well, very cool.
He did 3 episodes of Perry Mason, and he's probably most famous for the TV show Here Comes the Brides from 68 to 70 on ABC. He played Jason Bolt. So
I don't think I've ever seen that.
yeah, if you want to see him without the ridiculous beard and mustache, you can watch Here Comes the Bride.
So rumor has it that John Barrymore bailed after reading the script. I'm not even kidding. That's a real rumor that he no-showed because he read the script and was like, F this. I'm not doing this. And another rumor is that they actually had to drag this other guy, the replacement guy, Robert Brown, to do this role himself. Like he was kind of working on other stuff, last minute thing, wasn't into it.
You'd think from an acting standpoint, that's the most appealing thing about this episode is this role here, the Lazarus role, because there's a dual nature to it.
Yep.
So you'd think from an acting perspective, it would be appealing to an actor.
You would think, yeah. I mean, a fun role to play. That's why, Shatner says a lot of times that he loved doing The Enemy Within because he got to play good Kirk and evil Kirk, right?
Yeah.
And it was fun. Kind of a break from the norm. Especially playing 2 different versions of the same character. So you're seeing the insane Lazarus or the mad Lazarus versus the normal Lazarus, and he keeps switching between the two. Although sometimes I have a hard time telling which one's which.
Yeah.
They stick that bandage on his head later on so you can more easily tell.
Yeah. But even his acting doesn't really distinguish it. And here we go into, I guess we're winking out right now, right?
We are winking.
Yeah.
And we're going to get our first, I think it's a kind of a trans-dimensional fight scene.
Yeah, they just basically it's like a negative image.
Yeah, it looks like they're kind of wrestling, but they're really... It's really hard to figure it out, because once they go full negative, it's bizarre looking.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I was really curious how this episode was going to be handled from a remastered perspective, and they didn't really try to do anything with these sequences.
No, I'm really surprised that they didn't try to fix these up a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know if it was just limitations with the elements they had to work with. You'd have to do full replacements here as opposed to enhancing, a certain shot.
Well, this is like almost slow motion fighting. I mean, they're just kind of like fondling each other and it's like a little knee to the face or something there. I don't know what's going on here. But they're moving very slowly.
Yeah, I'd imagine if you were maybe under some kind of psychedelic...
psychotropic drugs, huh?
This might be a fun sequence.
Potentially.
You'd be waiting for these wink outs.
I noticed before, and I didn't get a chance to point it out while it was happening. I wish I did. But there was a conversation happening just before this sequence with Kirk, Spock, and Lazarus, and there was a bit of Kirk's dialogue that looked like it was overdubbed to me.
Really?
Like his lips were saying something different than what came out of his mouth. I was wondering, I'm going to try to go back and look at that again and see if I can try to read his lips and find out what they changed, because maybe that's something that part of that rewritten script that they changed. Maybe there was something originally that was in there. Maybe he was mentioning that engineer as part of that other plot line. But
so then we had another little fall.
Just a little one this time.
Yeah. And also during that discussion, Spock had indicated that Lazarus couldn't be chasing anybody because there were no other living beings or no other life forms on that planet.
Correct.
Which it seems like that's another thing that they seem to run into a lot. These planets that just have no discernible life forms on them.
Yeah, exactly. And then all of a sudden, mysteriously, there are life forms on them that the ship's sensors don't pick up. So this is a pretty widespread thing that we're seeing. It's affecting apparently the entire universe. And this is kind of rare to see a bandage.
Yeah. It also, this episode, it feels good to really be seeing the Enterprise again. Because the last two episodes, Errand of Mercy and then Devil in the Dark, were really sort of location based, get them off the Enterprise episodes. So, it was a character that I was starting to miss a little bit. In Errand of Mercy, all we saw was the bridge, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And Devil in the Dark, we probably saw even less than that.
Yep. Wasn't much. You saw the bridge.
Yeah.
Pretty much at the end.
Yeah. So, here we see McCoy, McCoy's quarters, or the medical
bay, sick
we
bay,
see the transporter. So it's one of those things where you don't really realize how much you miss it.
Yeah, you get some corridors here too.
Until it's back.
Yeah. So this is where McCoy is going to tell Kirk about the vanishing head wound that Lazarus, he's treated the deep abrasion and he bandaged it and then it vanished off of his head. And then it came back again.
Kirk's got no patience for him.
No, he's really dismissive at this point. Yeah. I mean, maybe he's kind of high touch right now because of what's going on, and Kirk is not one to be very happy with not knowing things.
Yeah,
especially when his main man Spock can't figure something out quickly.
Yeah,
I think Kirk feels a little more insecure about the prognosis. There's that country doctor remark again. He said that several times. Now, does nobody think it's weird that this guy in his raggedy clothes just kind of comes out of nowhere? He's hanging out in the rec room. Like, he's just there. Like, nobody thinks to ask him, what are you doing here?
But he had to come from somewhere. They have to assume that since he's on the ship, he has to be there for some reason.
Well, they just insinuated that he kind of escaped from sickbay and is wandering around on his own, and nobody thinks to come. Hey, security! There's this weird random guy,
and
he's wandering the hallways.
Yeah, and he was triggered by the mention of dilithium crystals.
Yeah. Oh, and here we go. Here's another convulsive freak out. I think it's kind of strange that there's not more people in these hallways too. 430 crewmen, and you saw two people in the hall. Now he's winking out in the middle of the hall. You wouldn't think there's people walking by and seeing him there.
Well, there's a couple of how many different levels are there on the original Enterprise?
Well, you're asking the wrong person.
I mean, there's quite a few.
Yeah, I don't know.
So
the
schematic. You spread 400 some odd over a couple different levels. Most people probably have assignments during normal business hours. There probably isn't a lot of quarter activity.
All right, well, here we'll take it from the other angle then. Since there's so many decks and so many quarters in the Enterprise, how did McCoy and Kirk just happen to pick the right hallway to go down to see Lazarus?
Plot convenience.
And we just saw Lazarus come out of the room with no bandage.
Yeah.
And now he's winked and the bandage and the cutter back. So we know there's something weird going on here, right?
Yeah.
Something bizarro. I don't know.
And I like that sort of Band-Aid technology where you can take it off and put it back on.
Yeah, we don't have that now.
Normally when a Band-Aid comes off, that's it.
Yeah, I had cut my finger a few weeks ago while I was on vacation with a razor, and it was pretty bad. And I must have gone through 10, 12 Band-Aids over the course of a week. Just dressing it and you take a shower, Band-Aids done. Yeah. So anyway, here we are, and bring Lazarus to the bridge. Oh my God.
Well, they got a security guy with them.
He's got phaser too. And now we're seeing a little pulsating light on the planet. And Spock is saying that it's not there.
Yeah.
This episode makes very little sense at times.
I guess we have to blame writer Don Ingalls.
Potentially.
Who also wrote the, I believe, second season episode of Private Little War. And he wrote that under the pseudonym of Judd Crucis. And he also wrote the film Airport 75.
We need pseudonyms.
Maybe season 2 we'll do under different names.
Yeah. Or I'll be Craig Cohen and you be Jeff Hewlett.
Oh, God, that would throw people for a loop.
Yeah, it would. So dilithium crystals get a lot of mentions in this episode.
Yeah.
More so than I've ever heard them mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
They've been mentioned before.
Yeah.
But they really beat you over the head with dilithium crystals in this episode. And, the dilithium crystals in this episode are shaped differently. They're like kind of square and flat, whereas, you see them in other episodes, they look different.
They actually kind of look like crystals.
Yeah.
Here they needed them more for, you'd almost insert them like a circuit board or something.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Now he's demanding.
Yeah, Lazarus
demands the crystals.
He's under the assumption that the crystals are the solution to this wink out fight that he's been having.
I mean, now that I've watched this episode several times over the last few months, I'm starting to see be a little easier to identify which Lazarus is which, because the behavior does change quite a bit in some scenes. Like this one, he's very manic. Mm-hmm. He's the bandaged Lazarus versus the unbandaged Lazarus.
Yeah.
Is his shirt kind of see-through?
It's hard to tell.
It might be the light. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got me. He's pretty tattered, though.
Yeah. And I don't understand why there's no explanation for this facial hair that he has.
And I don't know. And I love how he just exit the bridge and the security guard just stays there. He's like, he can just go do what he wants.
Yeah.
He's free to roam the ship.
Up, and here we go.
Here we go.
It's wink out time.
Right next to the communications outlet.
And that might be one of the best shots we've gotten of that.
Mm-hmm.
If you were going to build one at home, that's probably the shot to pause.
They milked the hell out of this effect with this static star field with that splotch of like a nebula or something in it, and they just kind of shake it in front of the semi-transparent over the shot. It got a lot of mileage out of that in this episode, and later they add that kind of spinning newspaper effect to it.
Yes.
Like from Batman or the Riddler has taken over downtown.
Did you see that entire series is finally coming out on DVD?
I did. I was very impressed with it.
Engineering.
There they are.
Yes.
And the dilithium crystals are just there, just hanging out.
They're the lifeblood of the ship.
And they're completely exposed, and they're in little fold-up drawers. That's very different in other Star Trek series. They're not that easily accessible. You can just pop out a drawer.
Yeah, they're not even in the main engineering section.
No, well,
they're sort of in the bowels of the ship, aren't they? Like by the warp core.
Mm-hmm. Yep. In fact, when in Star Trek 2, you see Spock actually go into that area. It's very, very different. The ship is very different. But I like how they're just in those little fold-out drawers. You just reach in and grab them. Like Lazarus can just go grab them right out of there. They focus on that guy for a long time. The knocked-out red shirt.
Yeah. So here's Masterson, Lieutenant Masterson, is being subdued, but she calls out to the captain before she's fully subdued. And I guess we should talk a little bit about the early version of the script.
Yeah, why not?
That had a relationship between Lazarus and Masterson, which sort of made Lazarus's acquisition of the crystals a little bit more.
Yeah, I guess
he was using somebody from from on board, which kind of called back to Space Seed and Khan having a relationship. So it was excised, and then there was also, I think you told me a concern about
the interracial relationship, since Charlene Masters is black and Lazarus is a white guy. This is in the late 60s. So from what I've read up on this, it seems that was kind of frowned on in certain markets. So they opted to take that out. Whereas in Plato's Stepchildren, famously in season 3, where you get the first interracial kiss between Kirk and Uhura, that actually got left in. Mm-hmm. So interesting that they would choose to not push the envelope here, but push the envelope, in the third season.
Well, it makes sense in the third season. At least you had 2 of the primary cast members, as opposed to a guest star and a lieutenant who we're never going to see again.
True. So the unfortunate downside to this is that the removal of that plot line left a lot of holes in the script that they had to fill in, and they chose to fill in those holes with kind of nonsense, random scenes of the winking out stuff and Lazarus kind of wandering around the planet's surface. And
We'll see him fall off of a couple more things as they use that to fill in. So this episode unfortunately suffered as a result of taking that plot line out. Who knows if it would have been if it would have played better had they left that in.
Yeah. Yeah, all we can do is wonder.
Yeah. We've been stuck with we've been stuck with the Band-Aid Lazarus for a while now.
Yeah. Well, they got to wink out.
Yeah, he's got to wink back to the other Lazarus.
Yeah.
Simply disappeared, Captain.
You think he shaves that portion of his upper lip, or is it just not growing there?
I don't know. It's a good question. I got spots on my face where I can't grow any hair. I can't grow a full beard because of that.
Yeah, neither could I. I mean, it would be embarrassing.
Yeah, I tried. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
But now they're going to wander around aimlessly again.
I guess they're looking for the
dilithium crystal. They could be laying on the ground here somewhere. This is a very inefficient search party because they're all together. They're not breaking up to look for. They're not going to cover much ground. They're kind of like walking around in circles. Uh-oh. Something tells me.
Oh, we're going to get a fall and a scream.
Oh, yeah. We're going to get a wink effect here. See, just random shots of him wandering around down there. So, this, strangely enough, this, along with an episode called Friday's Child, are the only episodes where outdoor planet scenes were filmed both on location and at the Desilu stage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so later on, you'll see a scene when Kirk flips over into the other universe that is actually done on the stage, as opposed to being done here at Vasquez Rocks.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, pretty neat. And
there's the spinning newspaper.
The spinning newspaper. I was looking for a kind of a headline on that, and they do that again. Like,
it looked like that was the template, and they just didn't plug in the writing. Here you got a stand.
Another slow-mo fight.
Traditional, like two wrestlers locking up, basically.
This could be a slower fight than Kirk versus Gorn. Yeah, they're doing the newspaper thing over and over again, but they really, really milked this.
Yeah. Yep. And, I would, if I was Lazarus, I would try and stay away from elevated spaces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd stay on firm, solid ground. I wouldn't go near any edges. One thing I thought was pretty cool, though, was the wind effects. They must have pulled in one of those giant fans to make all that wind.
Yeah.
Pushing the guy's hair around and all the shrubs are moving. Mm-hmm. So they went over and above on that aspect. It wasn't just kind of. Now, why is Lazarus trying to climb down these rocks? Oh, there he goes again. What an idiot!
Yeah. And I love how later,
what a goon,
Kirk will thank Lazarus for saving his life. After being the cause of it. That rock wouldn't have fallen if Lazarus didn't knock it loose. So
yeah, and there's that device again.
You know what? Yeah, that's 2 episodes in a row now.
That thing?
Yeah.
So it looks almost like a ViewMaster.
Yeah, and I think this is where we get that great moment where McCoy gets angry at the muscle head behind him.
Yeah, you think he got this muscle man? What do they call him? Muscle man, maybe?
I don't think muscle. Yeah, I don't think it's muscle head, but
it's something like muscle something. Yeah. Muscle man. It's coming up here any second now. Yeah. McCoy doesn't want Kirk to ask Lazarus questions. He's in too much pain. Poor Lazarus. He's been beat the hell up. He has been beat up.
So you know how much I like the sheets that they use,
mm-hmm.
and they sort of use a similar material to drape over
mm-hmm.
The paintings in Space Seed.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching. I flipped by The Next Generation on BBC the other day, BBC America,
mm-hmm.
and Data was painting. And guess what he put draped over the canvas?
Very cool.
So it was kind of a cool little callback to.
I like that.
So that it was cool seeing that because that was stuff in Next Generation I never really picked up on. I still want those sheets and
someday.
Yeah,
that's on the list, on the bucket list.
Yeah.
So now Lazarus is weaving another BS tale.
And McCoy didn't clean up the blood out of his mouth.
Yeah, right.
You think that would be the first thing you would do?
Absolutely. It's just kind of all over the corners of his mouth. It's on the top of his eyebrow.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks really beat up, man. I guess that fall was pretty severe. Yeah. But that mustache stayed on.
Yeah, if I was McCoy, I would have been like, to treat your wounds, I had to shave the facial hair.
Really, absolutely. It's kind of getting all stuck in there. Yeah, it's not cool. There's a lot of dialogue.
Yeah.
So now he's a time traveler?
Yeah, they're coming up with the theory that, or they're discussing the fact that there's time travel occurring within parallel universes. Or does the parallel universe?
I think the parallel comes later, but Lazarus is claiming that his ship is a time machine.
Yeah,
and he's a time traveler, and he's trying to get these dilithium crystals again. And Kirk is sympathizing, and there's that 430.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lazarus he realizes that he's not going to convince Kirk to give him the crystals. He's going to have to take them by other means. Get that muscle man out of here. And Kirk dismisses the security guard.
Yeah.
Again. Ugh. God.
This is a cool line from Kirk where he says, "Sometimes pain can drive a man more than pleasure."
True.
Which is a very cool line.
Very true. So now he's kind of choked Lazarus out, and he's taking that bizarre-looking device, and he's leaving again.
So the interesting thing here is we've got the Lazarus is using basically a time travel device, and is Star Trek the first series to really present time travel in so many different ways?
Yeah, I know that's possible. See, I don't really see this as time travel.
Yeah,
because I mean, the UFO, whatever that ship is down there, that little saucer thing, it just is a gateway to the other dimension, the other alternate universe. I don't really see where the time traveling part comes into this. Because it doesn't seem like when Kirk goes over later in this episode, it looked like the exact same time period.
But I always sort of took it that this guy wasn't from their time period. He was either from a future or
I guess
or an I guess the alternate, and it's even in the title. The word alternate's in the title. So
the alternative factor.
Yeah, time travel might be a misnomer.
Yeah, I kind of took it as Lazarus. Well, I think later on when Kirk meets the other Lazarus, he talks about that planet that they're on was the planet that he lived on, and somehow everything was destroyed, and maybe somehow they have traveled through. Well, they've been battling each other through time.
Yeah,
running from each other, and
so it doesn't seem like a real practical use of time travel.
No. So now they're trying to surmise where all this radiation on the planet's surface is coming from. And this is Kirk and Spock putting their heads together. And here's the other dimension thing. Kirk surmises that it's another dimension, occupying the same space at the same time. And now we're going to get the matter versus antimatter, positive versus negative, canceling each other out. And the dramatic lighting. I love the dramatic lighting they put on his face for the delivery of these couple of lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that Jerry Finnerman cinematography, which is almost, we talked about the Enterprise's character. The cinematography in this show is almost like another character in that nobody else would have really shot this the way that Jerry Finnerman did, which is kind of neat. It adds its own little unique perspective to things.
It certainly does. I can recall several of our episodes where I pointed out times where I thought the lighting was really great. Here, I mean, it's cool to see. I don't know if it's really enhancing the scene, but the lighting is definitely cool. And I guess it's supposed to be a dramatic delivery of those lines that are. So Spock is going to pontificate here on the mental state of Lazarus, and he's going to say he's like two different people.
And they're finally putting it together with the head wound is starting to make sense.
Yep. And it quite a ways into the episode.
Yeah, we're over a half hour in.
Yeah. So now Lazarus is going to escape again any moment now.
Yeah.
Because they just refuse to post a guard on him. He keeps dismissing the guard.
Yeah.
Like, nah, you don't need to watch him anymore.
Mm-hmm. The amount of times, though, that... And I guess this is really the first time they're dealing with a parallel universe. The enemy within sort of split Kirk's good and bad side. So we have yet to see the mirror universe. So I guess this is their first encounter with a parallel dimension.
Certainly seems that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you really can't count that splitting of Kirk, and we haven't gotten a mirror yet, like you said. So
yeah,
this is a very strange way to go about it.
Yeah.
So here we're getting into the matter antimatter, meaning that if the two meet in a physical space, boom.
Yeah.
Kind of like, Doc telling Marty.
Yeah, you can't meet
not to run into yourself. Yeah.
And I think that is now 2 weeks in a row where we've made a Marty McFly Back to the Future reference. So
wow, we're on a roll.
For those keeping score,
we are on a roll. I'm going to put in a plug for the Back to the Future podcast.
Oh yes, the Flux Capacicast, which you've been on.
I have.
Yeah.
Twice.
Yeah.
Twice. With our friend Guy Hutchinson.
Yes.
Fellow podcaster. Total and complete annihilation. Should the two of them meet
outside of the wink, I guess.
Outside of the but we're gonna find out what that wink is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a space between the dimensions. But if they were to meet in a physical space, meaning if this Lazarus gets the power to gets these crystals and gets himself enough juice to transport himself into the other dimension, it's all over.
Yeah. Now, this really bugs me here.
High voltage, yes. This bothers me too.
The fact that there's access to this seemingly important, if you reverse some circuits, you're going to do some major damage to the engineering section of the ship.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like that should be easily accessible. You'd think you need a passcode
or a key or
an access. It really bugs me that the Enterprise is that vulnerable.
You would think. I mean, all the different ways the Enterprise has been taken over and commandeered so far. And here's yet another way. You guys walk down the hall, open up this little panel, and switch a couple of banana plugs around and set the whole place on fire.
Now, and also, how did Lazarus know where these crystals were?
Well, wasn't he in here earlier? Knocking that guy out?
Yeah, he was. That's a good,
Wow, look at that smoke.
Yeah.
Ooh, that is a heck of a lot of smoke.
Another long shot of the communications panel as well.
That guy was a little bit handsy there, wasn't he? The red shirt guy, he had his hands all over Masters.
And again, the dilithium crystals seem way too accessible too.
Oh, absolutely.
You'd think that there would have to be some kind of removal protocol, considering that they're the lifeblood of the ship.
Yeah, wouldn't there be power coursing through those things? Like, if you took it out, wouldn't it arc?
But you would also think that there would be people that were authorized to do that.
True, and here's another thing that really bugs me. How does Lazarus know how to operate the transporter?
Yeah. It always bugs me, and we've talked about this, is the procedure for self-transporting. It really bugs me. And it seems like they do it when it's convenient.
Yeah. I was wondering, I mean, not only is it a self-transport, and he actually operated the 3 sliders without being on the actual pod, but how did he know how to set the coordinates on that thing? The buttons are nondescript.
Yeah, it's not even like Khan, where Khan was given, access to the ship's records.
Now, isn't it awful convenient that the panels inside his ship are the exact size and shape to fit the crystals from the Enterprise?
Yeah.
I thought that was a little convenient.
Yeah.
I really was surprised by, because you would think
I love how this engineering guy was like, I got knocked out a minute ago,
and
but
he's back. And see, Kirk had to have the transporter operated for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And now this part always cracks me up. When Lazarus is just about to achieve his goal, and guess what? No, not you. And then Kirk gets transported instead of Lazarus.
Mm-hmm.
So are we to assume that there was only enough power in the crystals for one person to go through?
No.
Because Lazarus could easily just fire it up and go himself, right?
Yeah.
And this is kind of slow-mo. Kirk runs forward, looks around, kind of doesn't know what to do. Turns around, runs back the other way. Like, what's he trying to do?
This sort of has a Generations vibe for me, you know, with like Soren trying to get back into the Nexus.
It's a good observation. I'm not happy you brought it up.
Why? Because you just don't want to think about the end of that movie?
No, I really don't want to think about Generations right now. We got like 2 years worth of content before we get to that, so let's just leave Generations alone for the time being. But yes, I see where you're going. Yeah. So, and here's the alternate.
Okay, so this was the set.
This was the set.
Yeah, you know, I didn't pick that up on first watch, which I guess speaks to the production design that they did, where you know the rocks.
There you go.
Well, that's obvious.
That's obvious. That's the set.
But the background shot there, I mean, looks pretty good. But yeah, I wonder. So this was later in the schedule, production wise, and they realized they hadn't filmed the scene yet, or
you got me on that one.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Oh look, and there's the sane Lazarus, kind of happy. So we'll have a little conversation, and I guess now Kirk understands that this is the sane or good Lazarus.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we can tell, you know, he's the one that you should listen to, not the other one. And this is the antimatter universe that Kirk is in right now.
Yeah. So now we sort of get this, this kind of has like a Terminator or Terminator 2 feel for me in terms of, you know, the fact that, you know, one guy is sort of tasked with the task of, you know, taking out somebody else that's meddling with time and space.
Yep.
And this Lazarus makes a pretty amazing, you know, choice.
Yes, he does.
I'm not sure I could make this choice to save
the universe.
To save the universe. I'm not sure I got it in me.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough call. But you have to, you know, I was wondering, like, you see there's a chair inside the little ship, right? Why does going through the doorway into the ship send you through this portal thing? The design of it seems weird to me.
Yeah.
Like, so are you supposed to sit inside of it, activate it, and then jump through? Or what's the intended use for this thing?
See, I didn't think Kirk was using it in the intended fashion.
Apparently you can use it either way, though.
More importantly, why? Like, what was the initial purpose of this?
Well, he's saying that they're saying now that that their people discovered the doorway into the other dimension, so you could travel back and forth between. But that's the strange thing, is if they could travel back and forth between dimensions, if they ran into themselves in the other dimension, wouldn't that cause everything to explode?
Yeah, it almost seems like it doesn't seem like there's a real reason for it, you know? It's not like time travel where you're like, hey, I want to go back to 15 years ago, or, you know.
Yeah, and that begs another question. If Lazarus from this universe and Lazarus from the other universe meet, in either universe it destroys everything. But why? Oh, maybe in the no, I'm thinking about the mirror episodes. I guess as long as they don't bump into themselves at all in any of the mirror episodes. I mean, does it have? Do you have to actually recognize yourself in order to have the universe end?
I don't know. I thought that was just the rules established for this particular parallel universe.
Maybe. But I'm thinking to myself, like, is it enough that both of them exist in the same universe? Like, if this Lazarus was in the bathroom and the other Lazarus just appeared somewhere nearby just because they're both in the same universe, then it would explode? Or do they actually have to see each other and go, oh, hey, you're Lazarus, and then boom, everything. I'm trying to kind of...
You'd almost think there would have to be a physical contact as well. A handshake, a hug, a punch.
You have to wonder, you have to wonder, why, what would necessitate that? What?
Just seeing, to me, it doesn't seem like there would be any scientific reasoning behind it. I could understand two people occupying the same space.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That makes sense to me.
Yep.
Seeing somebody across a room doesn't. But so now we're basically getting the plan, which is Lazarus is going to trap himself in the wink for eternity.
Yeah,
seemingly.
In the corridor between the two universes,
fighting the alternate version of himself for all time.
Now you would think that after a few minutes or hours of being in there and fighting each other, they say, you know what, let's just kind of hang out.
Yeah.
Maybe we can be friends. Yeah. I can't see them just physically beating each other up for the rest of time. I mean,
but even that, like, is time sort of suspended in that? Like, I mean, they don't have to eat or sleep.
They just fight, man. It's like the battle zone.
Yeah. And this was weird. Spock and the security team were just waiting.
Mm-hmm. And you know what really doesn't make sense to me? Why couldn't Spock just nerve pinch him and throw him in? Why does Kirk have to fight with him like this?
Yeah, they got the double axe handle or the double chop there, which was pretty great.
And look, he's trying to he's got him by the neck. Oh, Lazarus is pretty strong.
He is. He's mad. He's got that that madman
berserker strength.
Yeah.
But you think Lazarus wants to go? He wants to go. Why is he fighting? Why would he just jump right through?
Yeah.
It's a little strange.
It is.
Oh, Kirk just mugs him.
Puts him in a nice chicken wing.
Oh, he's not ready to go. He's not ready to go. Now, Spock could have just come over, pinched the nerve, and fixed that whole thing. They'd have just dumped him in. And then he would have been knocked out in the corridor. The other Lazarus could have picked him up. And, I don't know. Just seems like there are some certain instances where they could have used the nerve pinch.
Yeah. So they got the crystals back, and now Kirk said the ship needs to be destroyed.
I think that was an excuse for a fight scene there, but we're past that now.
Yeah. And now you got just a random red shirt was in the captain's chair, and now he's in Sulu's spot. He's the first officer chair.
Yeah. The best part of this episode is coming up right now.
Now look at
you have to watch the remaster to see it.
The fact that the Enterprise can pinpoint such a precise location with their phasers is pretty remarkable.
And here's the remastered shot. I love that shot. That looks really cool with the Enterprise firing on the planet from above. You don't see that happening a lot. So
no.
And you have to see the remaster to get it to look like that. That's really cool. And I guess by blowing up the little ship, that's going to keep them both caught there.
It closes the corridor. But it left a shadow behind.
It did.
Which I'm surprised nobody sort of ran with that shadow for, who knows? We could have had Star Trek II.
The Wrath of Lazarus.
Yeah. You left me in that corridor, Kirk.
Somebody smacked J.J. Abrams. He could have used Lazarus.
It's very cold in that corridor.
Revenge is a dish that's best served cold with a bandage.
And now we got one of a lot of episodes end with Kirk sort of pontificating on the bridge, and
this one kind of falls flat for me though.
Yeah, well, kind of like the whole episode, to be honest.
But this whole "what about Lazarus" thing, how would it be? Like they're thinking about what it must be like for him to be fighting himself for all eternity. And the universe is safe for you and me, Spock. You unfeeling bastard. But what of Lazarus? Why would anybody really care, though? I mean...
Yeah, he's a character that we were just introduced to 50 minutes ago.
Yeah, and we're supposed to feel like, bad about it, or we're supposed to feel, the struggle for Lazarus. Like, one of them's not going to kill the other one eventually, right? Mm-hmm. That'll just be kind of hanging out there.
Yeah. So, all right. I know last week we had a discussion about the essential nature of episodes and how on the website, the tricordertransmissions.com, you can see what we voted essential and non-essential, and how we've had a very similar run in terms of us agreeing on things. And I'm not going to say I think we'll agree here, but I think we'll agree here. And I guess I'll start and say that there's nothing in this episode that is essential to the canon of Star Trek. There's no character moments here for me. The introduction of a parallel world isn't enough for me to make this essential. So I am going to give this the non-essential vote.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting. You don't feel that Lazarus is essential? You don't feel it?
Maybe his mustache is.
Because Lazarus is still fighting right now.
Yeah.
He's still out there, man. He's still out there. All right. Yeah, I'll have to agree. The concept itself is interesting. I think the execution is a little bit poor, difficult to follow. I don't think it was fleshed out very well. Probably could have been done a little bit better. No character moments. No Scotty, no Sulu.
Yeah.
Kind of weak. So I think it's a double non-essential.
All right, and I think we've that's the first non-essential episode we've had in a while. So that brings us to the end of the episode, and next episode is an exciting episode for us. We are coming up on The City on the Edge of Forever.
Yes, and we are definitely going to have an extended discussion on that one. So following that episode, there will be another extended one, and I believe we're going to have a couple of guests with us.
Yeah.
So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, I really like these extended or supplemental episode discussions we do. It really gives us a chance to dig real deep into the episode, and then also get other people's perspectives too. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And I know The City on the Edge of Forever is an episode that's held in very high regard. Mm-hmm. So we've got an exciting next couple of episodes coming up for you between the episode itself and the supplemental. So I guess until then, we'll see everyone next week.
Yep, stay tuned. We'll see you then.
In this story, a man named Lazarus takes terrorism to new heights when he threatens to annihilate the universe. His situation involves the collision between matter and antimatter. Antimatter is a particle like a proton or an electron whose charge is reversed. When equal particles of matter and antimatter come into contact with each other, both particles are obliterated and huge amounts of energy are released, maybe even to the point where the universe explodes. So be very, very careful. Do not, I repeat, do not play with matter and antimatter at the same time, at least not at home.